job. If you have a question of any sort related to this or anything else, please feel free to ask at any point. Now, does anybody have a question? No, we're all good? And the florist was silent. Yes?
Okay. Back then, where did you get all the steel from? You have to wait for the miners to come down from the mountain?
The question is back in the old days, where did you get your steel? Excellent question. In the history of this country, in the early days, we were dependent upon English iron coming from the mother country. However, that's only if you were in a large town in the supply chain. If you were a blacksmith out in the wilderness or in some town away from the supply chain, you would literally take a trip and find ore yourself. You would take the rocks, bring them to your forge, and produce the iron out of the ore. And then you would make the items out. The reason so much of this stuff was so valuable was not just because it took time to make it. It took more time to produce the base material than it did to make whatever item you were working on. So if you were a blacksmith out in the fringe, you had to get it yourself. But a lot of people do not know that iron ore comes in a couple of different flavors. Of course, you've got the iron ore that comes out of the rock that's mined. But then we also had sources of what they called bog ore. If anybody's ever been out to the country or seen standing water that was nasty orange, that's actually iron oxide. And when that area dried up, that oxide was trapped in the mud. And so if you took those blocks and used those as an ore, you could actually produce iron from that. It's iron oxide. So they had sources of bog iron early in the Virginia swamps. The story of the swamp fox back in the day with the movie The Patriot, Mel Gibson's character was based on, the swamp fox. There was a lot of sources of iron there. But the argument can be made that we would have been unable to declare our independence until we had native sources of iron. In fact, the first government pork contract went to a place called the Saugus Iron Works, and it was an iron producing facility in the New England states. It never made a profit or anything close to it. It was subsidized by the government because we had to have the iron to make the weapons and the mechanics for war. Think about that much of the bar, and we're going to lay it over the edge of the anvil much like this, just a little bit of an angle. And then we're going to hammer down there. And we're going to do this on two sides, back and forth. And what's going to happen is that you're going to see a taper formed this way. That blob of metal will be left untouched because that's going to become the bowl of our spoon. And the taper will actually become the neck of our spoon. So, make sure she's good and warm. We have an excellent heat. I'm going to clean up that end just a little bit by tapping it with a hammer. Then we lay that edge over the anvil, and here we go. And in the space of 15 seconds, you can see what we've done. We now have a piece of metal that has been isolated on the end of the bar. We have a taper going down to it, but it has lost its color, so therefore we need to go back into the fire. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is actually make the bowl of the spoon, or the flat portion. Now, most people look at this little bitty tiny piece of metal and they say there's no way we're going to get a spoon out of that. That's because most people are used to dealing in two dimensions, construction paper, things like that. And if you cut it too small, you have to throw it away to get a new one. But we're working in mass. We're working in three dimensions. So all we need to do is take a good heat on this guy, and then we're going to crush this piece out. And you're going to be surprised how large of a spoon bowl we're going to have. So let me kick these coals back into the fire. Big piece, pop it back in there. And let's bring it up to heat. Now, once again, while that's heating, any other questions? Everybody good? Okay. We're going to shape the front end just a little bit. And ladies and gentlemen, look at that. Everybody can clap for that. It's okay. I'm not going to stop you. So now we have what will become the bowl of our spoon. But there is a little bit of a problem. We call this the Weight Watcher spoon, because you're not going to eat a whole lot without there being some sort of dish or some sort of shape in the spoon. So now we're going to need to make that dish. And the process, ironically, is called dishing. Of course, that means we've got to take another heat. I have to be very careful because the metal is now thin. And if I'm not careful, I can actually melt that material. Now, we're going to use this little hammer right here, which every man here should be able to recognize. The ball peen, fantastic. Now, gentlemen, I have double jeopardy questions for you. I'd like you to name a second type of peen hammer. We've always referred to this as a ball peen, but can you name another hammer with peen in the name? Never thought about it. Good, 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 good. Now, the peen simply refers to what is on the opposite side of the striking surface. This is the striking surface, this is the ball. This is called the ball peen, or this is the peen rather, excuse me. Now, in the store, if you see a hammer like this, they often sell this as a blacksmith's hammer, but that's not the right name for it. It has a crosswise section on the back. This is the striking surface, this is the peen. This is called a cross peen hammer. If this piece was straight up and down, it would be called a straight peen hammer. We do have another type of peen hammer, but we have shortened the name. The original name was called a claw peen hammer, and now we shorten it to be a claw hammer. Little vestiges of the blacksmith culture still embedded in our own. Many people don't realize that 100 years ago, blacksmiths were in demand everywhere. They were a normal part of life, okay? And we still have elements of their culture in ours. We just didn't know it. For example, can anybody name a phrase, a blacksmith saying? Nobody? You know them both. I'm going to start, yes.
With the metal like hot?
Yes, and that is actually the most uncommon of the two. Strike while the iron is hot. Okay, we've all heard that one. But the most common that most of you have used is too many irons in the fire. This saying came from the blacksmiths because if you were working on several projects and you would work them in a gang, so that instead of having to wait for it to come back up to heat, you'd simply turn around and grab another rod. However, because it's being heated constantly, if you had too many in there, they would begin to burn and to melt, so you would lose the entire batch if you had too many irons in the fire. Little pieces. Now, we're going to use our ball peen with the ball here, and we're going to use this space-age material called wood. Now, this is a piece of cedar wood. Start by making a little depression right here. We're going to take the bowl of our spoon and we're going to lay it over the top of this wood, and then we're going to hammer in the center of the spoon. What's going to happen is the wood underneath the middle of the spoon will begin to burn away. The bottom of the spoon will drop, but the edges outside will stay high. This will give it that concave or dish shape we need for a spoon. We have plenty of heat. We go over here. to go to the top of the anvil just to clean up the shape just a little bit and to straighten the neck. And ladies and gentlemen, if you can see, we now have a dish in our spoon. Everybody can clap.